Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. This is the third in our winter series. Ben, I'm excited about this series. How are you going this week, first of all?
Well, I'm going well, but I'm also loving the winter series. I mean, the first two have been terrific and we've got two more to go. And also the story here, there was something about Scott, Bryce, that, you know, like as soon as I spotted him, I just knew, he's a smart and clever man. So I think we just need to cut to the interview we did with Scott.
All right, let's cut to see what Ben's talking about, folks. Let's go and have a little listen to the conversation we had with Scott White. All right, Ben, today we got a very special guest on our winter series. We are talking to a man by the name of Scott White. He is an avid Property Couch listener. He is also a property investor himself with a very interesting backstory regarding how he has built and gone through the navigating the journey towards financial peace through making sure his money is looked after first and then investing in property. But I'm reluctant to say this, Ben, but I might as well say it just to open the banning. He is a Collingwood supporter, so this could go anywhere. But welcome to the Property Couch, Scott.
Hey, Bryce and Ben, great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Bryce, I've just been saying that I've just been, the caliber of people we've had on the winter series is just incredible, right? But now you've gone to the highest level, the highest, bringing in fellow Collingwood supporters only means this will be an amazing episode. So thank you. Thank you, Scott, for putting your hand up and obviously coming on the couch with us today. But it's just great to see another Pie supporter out there just smashing it on the property investment front.
I wouldn't be lying. I am a bit worried. I'm not sure there is a category on the podcast channels to sort of let everyone know that the level of discussion will be at around the grade 1, grade 2 sort of level.
But turn it up there.
I'm going to try and lift it. And I'm just talking about you, Ben. I haven't even thought about Scott yet. But
hopefully I can live up to those expectations, guys, and perform better than what Collingwood are on field at the moment this year. So only way is up.
The expectations are very low, Scott, so it's only up for you. But thanks for joining us. It's always a privilege to chat to people who are prepared to open up their experience and their pathway to where they are. But can you tell us? Take us back to the beginning with conversations over the dinner table when you were growing up. What were they like around money?
Yeah, so we grew up in a little country town, just my brother and I and my parents. Conversations around money were not really structured, but anytime we wanted to buy something, it was always around, okay, how much have you got saved, or how long is it going to take you to save that amount to buy what you wanted? So it was really subconsciously teaching those elements of delayed gratification, which has set us up really good in life. And I know that compound interest is one of the great wonders of the world, but I reckon delayed gratification is another one. It's really been a valid part of our journey. So
your parents were transparent. They had conversations with money with you, like money in, money out bills, or just the principles around delayed gratification.
Yeah, so it was very secretive around their money. I think they liked to, because they had nothing when they grew up, they liked to hold on to it and not be seen to be wealthy at all. So it was really just around our own personal finances. Okay, you want to save for, no, all I wanted as a kid was a motorbike. When you live out the bush, it's all you want, right? So it took only 14 years of grinding my parents down to finally agree to them to go halves at 14, but I had to save that money and we went halves in that. And you don't really have it as much now, but you can still do it a similar way, in that the process of laybys was amazing, because you'd be drooling over what you wanted, right? But you knew you had to wait for it, and you weren't going to buy your lunch that week at school because you could save another couple of dollars and put that away into something that was going to get the thing that you had on lay-by quicker. So that's a really good tool, and that means that we just don't grasp at something that we may not necessarily want or have buyer's remorse later on.
50% of our audience are nodding their head saying, yes, lay-bys, and the other 50% are saying, what's that?
What are
right?
they?
You know, now I can get my good and pay for it later, right? So,
but delayed gratification, sorry, Ben, but delayed gratification is actually a really positive thing, because the enjoyment of the purchase starts when you think about buying it and studying it, not just when you pay for it and take it on. And that's still true in our lives in our 40s. It's a good part of it.
It's actually scientifically proven that is actually the case. So they've done research, in this particular area, and it is very clear that the study of money and happiness and the process of getting that means that you can extend that excitement and that positive energy around getting that good at a later time. So it's actually good for our physical health just as much as it is for our mental health when we do absolutely earn that. So you're 100% right there, Scott, in terms of what that story looks like. Hey, I want to ask you some questions about, so grew up in a country town. Can you give us context? Whereabouts? Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, whereabouts?
Central Victoria, in the goldfields in Central Victoria. Yep.
Beautiful, out in the goldfields there. And so your parents were, there's not a story of not having a lot, but just very mindful of money. You didn't necessarily go without, but they also taught you the value of earning money, and then the value of spending money sounds like is part of what you've learned.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, Ben. And it was really a story about how much effort and time is it going to take you to save to buy that thing, and then you'd internalize that and go, well, hang on, I'm going to have to give up my weekends and work for this thing. Well, I don't really want it so much anymore. So yeah, it was a good upbringing like that, and they come from nothing and squirreled everything away, and that sort of ingrained on me, and that had a lot of positive things, but it also had some negative things which you guys have helped me with later on in my life as well, with my money mindset.
Can you give us a little hint on what they were?
So one of the money mindsets is I'm a squirreler. So you imagine growing up like that. So we used to budget everything down to the dollar, right? And as your finances get a bit stronger and your life gets busier with kids, you lose your discipline around that, and it become a chore, a major chore, and we just stopped doing it, right? That's the truth of it all. We stopped, and we kept saving, but we probably could have put away more, but we forgot about all the budgeting. And my mindset was squirrel everything. So I'd always overestimate how much I could put away and lock away in our offset account and leave a lower amount for what Julie and the kids needed to actually get by. So even though it wasn't really a money issue and that we didn't have the money, I felt that it was locked away. And then once you've got to draw back out of there, it become like a loss, and it was like a hit. So that was a tension that I was creating myself, but also propagating onto Julie and the kids, because they felt like that, okay, they had to be tighter than what they needed to actually get through a normal week. So the money smarts, and we're not perfect at this at all. However, that the whole gamifying the mojo and the 7-day float has actually made it a bit of fun now, where before that the budgeting was just boring spreadsheets, and we'd done it for years and we're over it. We couldn't do it anymore.
Well, there is an interesting part of your backstory around relationships, which we'll get into shortly. But Ben, you had a question?
Well, I just think a lot of people can relate to that story. That's a very similar story to me, Scott, in regards to, the focus on saving in our household was very, very strong. I'm, on record as saying we didn't miss out on much, but certainly being able to then have confidence to spend money, and when things are improving and your financial position is in greater shape. We've talked about it before as financial anorexia, which is that reverse sort of situation where you just, you get to a stage where, the amount that you've got is still never enough, and you got to keep saving more, and you got to have, another million or another 5 million or whatever that looks like. But, and it happens, even in a high society, but it also happens down in middle class and lower class households, that they just get into this routine and mindset. So, as you just put your hand up there, I mean, obviously our people in our community can't see that, but I relate to that. And, I've had to do a lot of work on myself in terms of how our household's grown up in that particular instance as well, where you're getting to that situation. So I'm keen to ask the next question in that series. So you go off, you get the motorbike through a 50-50 match. You're obviously, I'm assuming, working part-time. When how did you set up your finances when you started to become an independent man? And then what did it look like in terms of doing that work to break that cycle for yourself?
Yeah, so you're right. I did work part-time, and that was part of growing up. You always had a side gig, whether it was my own little business selling flowers in the spring and all that sort of stuff, just trying to make a quid, and then having a part-time job. So I remember when I finished uni, I was 22 and I got my first job, and you feel great about it, or you're getting this cash or salary that you never imagined that you were going to earn. And at the end of uni with the work, and it won't sound like much, but I had $8,000 in my savings account, right? That was at the end of
Wow.
uni.
That's phenomenal.
So
Yeah.
I pumped $3,800 into a car because I was moving to Melbourne, and the other $4,200 into a dirt bike again. So that left me with a print sum of zero in my bank account, which I didn't think about too much until I started working. And then what happens in a big organisation when you're getting your first paycheck? Well, the bank account was wrong, or there was some deeds, so I didn't actually get paid for a couple of weeks. And it was like, hang on, I've got no, you guys call it defence, and I had no money left in my bank account, and I had rent to pay as I just moved to Melbourne and some bills, and that was like, that was a really good lesson that, hang on, defence is the structure for the whole thing, right? Even though I didn't call it defence at the time, it's when you're flying close to the wind and you feel like you've got nothing, it's a good lesson.
Hey, Scott, did I just hear that the dirt bike was worth more than the car?
It was. Yes, and you'll still laugh. Up until recently, we just had a 30-year-old car that we've kept going, and again, that was part of that whole delayed gratification. It was really important for us with our business and our own personal ethics, was to buy a battery car, electric car. So we saved and we waited for over a year after we paid the deposit to get that car, but the enjoyment started as soon as the deposit was paid. It was so good, and we're glad that we did. So, yeah.
So around these times, you graduated from uni, you got your first job, first paycheck, didn't go in for a couple of weeks, but then you get into a rhythm. What did money management look like for you in those first few foundational years when you were independently earning your own income?
Yeah. So you guys talk about buckets a lot, and we kind of had that growing up as a kid, where you had a little bit of money for your week, to, if you buy your lunch once a week and go out with a mate or whatever. And then there was the middle bucket, which was to save something for slightly bigger than a week-to-week expense, but nothing major. So you'd have a little bit of money in that you'd be churning to save up for something, and then had like a bigger account that you're always chipping money away into. So that was how I started. So I started from zero again after I'd blown it all on a motorbike, and then just had worked out what my day-to-day expenses were and had that just locked away, and that would be automatic. And then everything else I trapped for a bit of enjoyment, and then saving. I didn't know what I was saving for until I was lucky to meet who became a mentor, who helped me on my journey. But it was having that savings that allowed me to join on that journey from the start. So really having that defence was, or having that cash float behind me, which I built up as quick as I could, was what got me on this property ladder in the first place. I reckon it's really understated, that defence part. Everyone talks about where to buy and what type of asset and that sort of stuff, but actually until you're ready to buy and it's going to be stress-free about holding on to that asset, that's really getting to the starting block.
Yeah, there's some wisdom there we'll dive into. But tell us a bit about your mentor. What was that in your 20s, and what were they mentoring you in?
Yeah, so a great guy, Terry, just must have saw something in me and his son, who I was friends with. We both graduated from engineering. And he said, look, I'm looking at starting a investment property trust. Would you join me? And I just blindly threw all the money at him that I could afford, and we followed him along that journey. And so it was really a learning of osmosis, in that he had the skills and the tools to be able to grow that along. But he brought us younger guys along as well with him. So he really helped me get on that ladder, and it's just bubbled away from putting a tiny bit away at my first job when I was 22 to yeah, the dollar that you first save is worth way more than the thousands of dollars you put in at the end of the journey, isn't it? So it's being able to follow and learn from him, which has set us up. And it hasn't all been smooth sailing. There's been some downs but a lot of ups. And it's it's a pretty amazing journey. Quite boring actually, because it's just time and the right asset selection, and you just let it roll. But it's pretty cool when you get to this end and you're still quite young, and that you're able to make some choices that they're not able to before we had this situation set up.
It's quite profound what you said there, the fact that it's boring, because that's important, right? Because the process is actually quite straightforward and boring. And we've often said, if you want adrenaline, go bungee jumping. But if you actually want to get financial peace and financial security, it's following a well-worn path that doesn't have overt risks attached to it, and you're effectively putting one foot in front of the other. So you mentioned before that there was some stress that was being placed on the relationship, Scott, with being a squirrel.
That's me.
What did that look like? How did that change? Yeah, because I know that that's not the case now, but that wasn't always the case. So tell us a bit like what pressures were on the relationship and what actually caused the change.
Yeah. So really the cause of the issues was me not having a proper handle on our finances anymore and feeling that I needed to, but I just let go of the control, because the budgeting got so boring and it was mundane that I didn't feel like I knew where all the money was going. But what was still saving, that wasn't the issue. We were still saving and putting money away, but I didn't feel like I knew where that money was coming from, and I didn't know where all the extra was going. So I felt that we were missing out on savings, and vice versa. Julie felt like she was really stressed about managing the kids day to day, and she couldn't understand why the money wasn't there and why we weren't saving as well. So it was really about the piece around not having visibility on where the money was going. Felt like I was on a train without a brake and couldn't steer it, couldn't slow it down, and it felt out of control. So that raised its tension within me, because my mindset is around money as safety for me. So I want to have as much as I can for a rainy day, and be able to draw down on that whenever I need to. And obviously Julie and three girls, she had to feed them and clothe them and run the family budget as well, which I'd keep as a minimum because of my squirreling tactics. So yeah, what changed was actually, it hit me when the 7-day float was like, hang on, that can be a bit of fun. We can set it to a reasonable figure, but not realistic and not unrealistic as well, and have a bit of fun to get to that. And if we spend all our money by day 5, then we've got to tighten our belts for a couple of days. Like it's actually a bit of joy and delayed gratification in that, instead of just a mundane Excel spreadsheet tracking where the money's going and scratching our heads about how we're going to reduce it. So yeah.
So there's a lot of honesty in your message there, Scott. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of traditional households where those types of things occur, where one person's in control of the money and they can potentially reduce the amount of access to that money. And ultimately, what we advocate is openness around money and full transparency inside the household. And then for you to come on and publicly talk about that is obviously should give others confidence to also make sure that that everyone in the household is fully informed around that money management. I want to ask you, in terms of when you did see the Money Smart system, did you go straight to the full structure where you had the primary offset and then you also had the debit card and the credit card, or how did you set up your Money Smart system originally?
Yeah, pretty much we've gone with that full structure. I haven't migrated to the online platform yet, only because we're kind of like, it's our own personal finances and we keep that to ourselves. We don't need to be compared to anybody else, and I don't feel like I need to compare. So we do it like that. We've gone away from cash because cash has just got harder sort of to manage and pay things, and it's easier to budget with those structures of having our debit cards and credit cards only for bills. So we've gone with that, and we just have structured accounts that we pay for certain things out of for our living and lifestyle, and that.
Yep.
It works pretty
And how do
seamless.
you
It's low effort.
How do you measure projections and planning for the future? So what sort of planning have you done? You mentioned earlier that you when you lost sight of the money, or when you weren't looking at it on on a regular basis through spreadsheets and so forth, you felt a little bit lost in terms of the direction of where you're heading. How have you overcome that in regards to your planning for retirement?
Yeah, so we got every single transaction that we did for a full 12-month period. We did it actually twice, so 24 months. So we had a good handle on what our expenses are for now and for the next few years. So that really helped us set up our buckets every week and how much we're going to put in to each one.
Yep.
We've never had any bad debt either. So we've been fortunate, never had a credit card debt or had a car on a hire purchase. So we've got a pretty good indication on what our retirement income needs to be once the kids move out of home. So that's given us the freedom that we're really, really on track to where we need to be. And the peace that brings around your business and your work and your home life and everything like that is amazing for both of us.
And have you done the analysis on the property portfolio itself in terms of whether it's still negatively geared or positively geared? Like, are you sort of working out your increments in terms of, are you 15 years or so away from hanging up the boots work-wise, or a little bit earlier? Like, what sort of estimations do you have in terms of that forward planning?
Yeah, so we've got our own business, which we love doing, but we don't want to work at the same pace that what we're working. So it's not about hanging up the boots in 10 years. We want to, in only a few years' time, just kind of scale it back and keep our finger in the pie and have some productive time working, but also more relaxing time. So that's what we're working towards. Our portfolio is just turned a couple of years ago positively geared, and that's a good problem to have. We sold our only investment mistake last year, and we're just in the process of buying our last one, which we're looking for some value add that we can draw back on in a few years' time that will help make the whole portfolio positively geared. So that's what our plan and working towards.
Can you tell us if we were talking to Julie right now, what would she say was the difference, Scott, in terms of, you talked about the 7-day float, having some fun, just freeing up the shackles of you still achieving your goals of feeling in control and valuing delayed gratification, but also Julie being able to have a bit more freedom in what she's doing for her and the girls. What would be her feedback around the effect that's had on your relationship?
It's more than money. It's actually the emotional support that comes with that. So Julie had some health issues 6 months ago, and to be able to back off work for both of us and throw whatever money we needed to do at that without having to worry about the future so much, she felt that I was there supporting her, which in the past that would be like a conflict about my squirreling techniques and mindset. So that's big in terms of relationship, to be able to provide that to someone and receive that as well. So that, and I didn't realize the impact of my squirreling until she complained to me one day, which she didn't know if we'd have enough money on the accounts to pay for certain things. Like, she mentioned that a few times, and it's like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Like, we're far from destitute, and your loved one has to think like that. That's not the right way to handle money.
Well said. Well said. Hey, you rank yourself as a typical Aussie. Grew up in the Goldfields area of Victoria, raising 3 girls on you wouldn't say outrageously strong incomes. What do you think has been part of your success? You mentioned earlier time. Was it because you started early? I mean, you came into university, you had a mentor in the 20s who talked about a property trust. So I'm keen to sort of learn a little bit more about that journey. But what are what are some of the big takeaways you put your success down to? It's very clear you're organised with your money and you're in good control of it. Is there anything else that you would add to that in terms of why you are where you are? Because, I mean, people could be listening to this with 3 children going, there's no way known that I could retire earlier or retire comfortably with raising, 3 kids.
Yeah, there's a lot to that question, Ben. Thanks, mate. So really, there's a few key things, and they're simple. And it's about putting something aside to invest in the earliest you can. Okay, I studied engineering at uni, and you come out of that with a decent salary, and career's been good. But vice versa, we also chose to have a single income for nearly 10 years while my wife stayed at home and looked after the 3 kids. So, okay, the one income was strong, but we only had the single income family as well. So we are far from really extreme high earners, and we don't live a really flash life either. It's about really, my whole money mantra is save for the day to day so I can spend it on the things I enjoy. And we do that, and we live a good life. We don't feel like we're lacking anything. But it's because that we haven't lived an exorbitant life in our younger years that we put things away and let that invest. It's just all of a sudden you look back and go, oh my God, we didn't actually put that much money into it, but it's grown. And it actually at the moment, it feels like I'm on a surfboard and I can feel the wave lifting underneath me, because it feels like I can't do much to slow the growth down. It's just, it's growing at a rate that I couldn't imagine that I was ever going to get to. So it's around, just thinking, and I always put back to how much time it's going to take me to save to buy whatever thing I want to save. And that really is a sobering check to see, well, do I want to spend a month or 2 months working in a stressful job just to buy whatever it is that I want to buy? And it makes us think like that. Yeah, putting money away and investing it early.
Can I press in on that story, Scott? Because you've obviously got a number of properties, and feel free to let us know as much or as little about your portfolio as you like. But you're talking about being in a time where the entire country is lifting in property value for most areas. So, it's that story of someone sitting in the shade today because they planted a seed 20 years ago. And it's and you're the beneficiary of the decisions that you made a long time ago, and the compounding impacts of those decisions. So, what is that like for you? And what would be your advice to others who think, well, okay, well, that's all right for you. You've got a few, names on a few titles. That's all right for you. But plenty of times in the past, you didn't have that. So you were just prepared to actually make a decision to buy something so that at some point in time, you did benefit from that compound growth.
That's right, Bryce. And I'm not an overly risky person, right? My heritage is Scottish. We like putting our things away and saving it and squirreling. So that's my mindset. And actually, I was so risk averse when we had 3 children that I sold my property trust and paid cash for my principal place of residence, because I didn't want to feel like I was locked into a job that I didn't want to stay in and have 3 children and a wife at home and a big debt. So that was a mistake that we made. At the time, we thought it was the right thing to do. And you imagine the pride in our early 30s, as 3 young kids. We put our title and we hid it in the closet at home where no one could see it. But every time we opened the door to that closet to put the clothes away, we knew it was ours and we felt safe. So that felt good and the right thing to do at the time. I absolutely wouldn't do that again. I should have been more embracing of risk at that early stage. And it didn't take me too long to work that out afterwards, because basically it's very hard to save for your own house and a retirement on a wage nowadays in Australia. So you've got to have some leverage and some capital growth working for you the easy way. So yeah, that's a big part of that journey.
When was that aha moment, Scott? Because that is so true. So first of all, congratulations, straight out of uni, putting money aside, getting it working for you, putting it into a trust with a group of mates and someone who you trusted with that opportunity. So I probably want to start there, because I do want that question answered for myself. There are so many of these people out there who want to pool everyone's money and potentially invest it with limited experience. And usually those stories end pretty badly. And obviously when we're talking a big community, we're pretty careful about what we say about joint ventures and those types of things. What was it about Terry and what he did that sort of gave you the confidence that this was the right decision, and how you executed? And then my next question, which relates back to, when did you discover leverage and when did you decide to pull the trigger on that? So let's start with the first one in terms of the trust and that journey, because they're usually, as I said, if I was to count the number of failures compared to successes, because everyone has different time frames and expectations of investing together. Tell us about that story.
Yeah, so you've hit the nail on the head with a couple of those things, Ben. It's not all cheese and chocolates or whatever you say. It's there were some ups and downs in that journey, but with Terry, he was investing his own money, and he was also backing his son and backing myself in that too. So, and he'd run a successful business, and for me, I looked up to him and could see that he had wealth and he had freedom because of that wealth. So I just wanted to copy him basically, and I didn't know anything and just thought I'd learn everything I could from him. And it felt really smooth because he was investing his own money in equal portions to what I was, and his son was involved as well. So there was a lot of vested interest from his side there too. It changed over time, that investment group, and then you're right, people had different vested interests, and it was absolutely right for me to get out when I did. So it was good for me to get on the property ladder in that way, and it was good to get out. And what it gave us when we got out was fantastic too. So it was a way that I could invest in a low risk way, which suited my style at that time, and still make some gains from property. And then that allowed us to do some good things. And
can I jump in there, Scott? Can I just quickly jump in there? Did you have investment rules? Did you have a process where you're having regular meetings? Was there an agreement, an investors agreement in place that everyone knew what was going on, a shareholders agreement, those types of things? Was everything done by the book?
Yeah, absolutely. It cost probably in the day $5,000 in accountants and legal fees to set it up, but there was rules about how to pay people out if they wanted to get out in a hurry. There was always a float to be able to allow people to sell out their shares in a hurry. There was buyback options. It was really well structured, and that allowed it to work because it grew and it shrunk in time because people did need to get out. So it's really important about having a legal framework in place that everyone knows about when we sign up to something like that.
Couldn't agree with you more.
There's probably a bigger challenge. The landscape's changed a little bit more nowadays in that banks will look at the total debt pool of a trust, an investment trust. You got someone and allocate 100% of that to each investor, where it wasn't like that when I was in my 20s. So that would limit your own personal property growth. Nowadays doing that, you just got to take that into consideration. But so, yeah, we had a good journey with that, and it worked really well. And then it felt like it was the perfect time to get out, and we did, and achieved my first financial goal in life, which was to own a beautiful home and have no mortgage over that. And then we kind of hit cruisy street for, I think, 3 years until I was about 35 or something like that. And then it's like, hang on, okay, we've done that part, but how am I actually just going to keep living without working? And then that was when I realized that, all right, well, I've saved X dollars in these few years. If I extrapolate that for another 20 until I'm 55, is that going to get me to retirement and be able to have an investment pool to live off? And it wasn't going to. So it was like, well, hang on. Yeah, we need to actually leverage and get some capital growth. I'm not comfortable. I'm comfortable investing in the share market to a small degree, but there's no way that I would have the amount of debt that I've got on my property portfolio than what I would on something that could diminish in value really quickly. So for me, property was a more stable asset to invest in.
What was the guiding influence at the time? Because you had Terry in your 20s, and then you sold out of that, paid off your home, and then got to 35 and thought, I'm going to invest in a property. But we're talking what, late 90s, early 2000s? Is that? I'm trying to get my timeline here.
So graduated from uni at the end of the 90s.
Yeah.
So started reinvesting again in the 2010s, early 2010s.
Okay, so there was a few more resources out there at that time, but what were you using to draw strength on? Because you are Scottish heritage, and leverage is probably not, I guess, standard MO for the for that sort of mindset. So how did you break out of that conditioning and then take the plunge, or was it all set up with Terry back in the 20s and you'd already overcome that?
No, I hadn't overcome that. And you guys talk about it so many times in your podcasts. It's like you got to have the best team around you, and it's the same with Eddie McGuire, our champion, former president of the Pies. He always talks about that he's never the smartest man in the room, and he's always got a great team. So
I like the way you did that. That was actually
nice
without
segue.
skipping a beat. Yeah, no, impressive.
It was. I loved it.
Yeah.
But so I'm definitely not the smartest property person in my team, but I've got a great finance guy that helped me set up some structures that gave me control of my money while still getting the leverage I needed to have. So having a really good finance guy, and then all the other people in the team really helped with that. But it was really that start about having the structures set up with loans to be able to free up all the cash that I had that gives me the defence to be able to make decisions. So yeah, that's where it started from. And then it was a bit of trepidation again when we got back into investing in property. And it was around, oh God, what happens if we don't have a tenant? But that's really, if you buy a good property and you got a third of the population are renting, there's always going to be someone looking for the property to rent from you. So once I got over those couple of fears, it's just been onwards and upwards from there.
And in terms of your buffers, Scott, what you're obviously running offsets and liquidity. It sounds like you need those as your comfort thing. Do you sort of measure that out in terms of time frame? Like if you've got a year of buffers in the event that there was a hit to cash flow?
Yeah, so I do it based on years, and then I let it build up, because you guys have got a famous saying, you buy when your cash flow affords, and we do that too. So when we save up enough cash deposit for the next property, then we let our defence or our buffer come down, but never below. We've got, it's kind of ridiculous, I don't need to say how many years, but it's a lot, and it gives us a confidence to keep reinvesting. It's actually really important, because I don't want to do it in a stress way. I've got a business to run and I've got other things to stress about. So I don't want to be worried about loss of tenants, or if a property goes bad, or if there's a major repair required. I want to be able to relax and still absorb all those.
Tell us about the property you bought in South East Queensland, Scott.
Yeah. So that's my second property mistake. The first one I mentioned before didn't access leverage enough early on in my life. I would change that. The second one is I'd never trusted my instinct, and I bought a brand new house in South East Queensland. It didn't feel right for me, but the market was running hot, and everyone was saying get on board and talking about growth corridors and all this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, everyone knows more than I do. So I never trusted my instinct, and I was thinking, why would someone pay more for this secondhand property in a few years, more than what I'm paying now when it's brand new? But I didn't listen to that, and I jumped and I bought that property, and luckily I sold it for the same price I bought it for. It cost me time, basically, and I held that for 5 years, which that if that was an investment grade property, that's a significant amount of money that would have been in my back pocket. I know Ben talks about a mistake he made when he was convinced to sell something else previously, but yeah, I went with the bells and whistles, and the thing that got me was the growth corridor. But that's fine. A growth corridor is good for development and releasing new blocks of land. It doesn't do anything for capital growth for your properties, and that's the reason why you have to invest in properties, is for the capital growth. So it just didn't work for me.
Yeah, they miss a bit. It's the developer bank account growth corridor.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, so they made plenty of cash, and I didn't make any. But I don't regret that, because it just reiterates all the knowledge that you guys teach, and my own gut feeling about what makes and constitutes a good property that's desirable for other people to buy. So yeah, that was just part of the life journey.
So how did that change your selection philosophy, your asset selection philosophy from that point? What were some of the sort of key drivers or variables that you were looking for to allow you to move forward and buy the other properties that you've bought?
Yeah, so I'm engineered, I'm structured in my thinking. I've got a spreadsheet where I rank every property I look at, and it spits out a number at the end, and that gives me my own sort of investment score. And so I weight a lot of criteria, and a lot of those are around picturing yourself, where do I want to raise my 3 girls, and if I choose to access to good public schools, do I want to be driving for a long time? No, I don't want to do that. Trains are important. I like access to good close train stations to cities. So yeah, I fell for the bling, and it didn't pay off for me. And it's reiterated that you just picture yourself, where could a nice middle class family see themselves living and enjoying life in that suburb? Parks close by, public amenity, and schools and train stations are important for me. And walkability is another one as well.
Hey, Scott, can you help us here? There's people that listen to our podcast who really do get our core message of buy established properties. And then there are others who do unfortunately get seduced by the bling.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit more? Like, what if someone's listening to this and they're going, Scott, what do you mean by the bling? What do you mean by being seduced by that? Can you give a couple of sort of pieces of wisdom from your experience that just, I know we're saying don't buy brand new and all that, but is there a little 1%er that might help someone have that penny drop?
Yeah, a big part of the spiel is talks about growth corridors, and I mentioned that before. And that's not a capital growth corridor. That's just a land bank that's able to be grown into. So that's not going to get you any growth. And the other thing, like a brand new house, like a car, looks old in a few years' time, whereas a character home that's got a bit of a differentiation to its other neighbours is something that people could feel proud of owning and walking into. And one, they want to rent those properties because they can see themselves entertaining and having their friends over, and also families want to move into those as well. Whereas a new property that you buy off the plan ages, the carpets get stained in it, and it doesn't look new anymore. And it looks the same as the fifth house down the road, and they're kind of built in 5s or 6s, and they all look very similar. So you're trying to sell the same product in a market where there's a whole lot of other products that are the same for sale. You actually can't compete on price because you've got no point of differentiation. Where if someone falls in love with your property, then it's the checkbooks get opened after that, don't they? It's
the emotion kicks in. One of the things I've had a recent conversation, and it's to that point too, Scott, and it's for the benefit of the listeners, that I was chatting to a friend of my wife. She's just buying their first home, right? And they're buying in one of these estates, and she's a mature age first home buyer, right? And she was like, I definitely wanted to make sure I had the north facing rear. And she was talking to one of her friends who was in that particular subdivision. She goes, "Oh, never even thought about that." And I guess that's important for people to understand. It's a bit like a property supermarket where people walk into a display outlet and they say, "I will have that piece of land, and then I'll walk over here and I'll pick that house and I'll just marry." And quite often there's so much overwhelm and emotion going on for people that are getting to the market for the first time that some of these fundamental things aren't thought of. And I recently said to my wife's sister, who's buying her first home in these new subdivisions, I said, you've got to choose a facade that separates you from everyone else. And but it was going to cost an extra $3,500. I said, you've got to spend the extra $3,500 because it's important, because it doesn't matter now, it matters later on. So it's interesting to get into the psychology of what's going on in some of these growth corridors, because quite often they're pitched to investors and pitched to first home buyers, and quite often that differentiation that you've talked about is an afterthought, which you can't control once the subdivision's been done. So that's a message that I'd like to land to our community on the back of what you said before, that the newer areas are often being based on decisions that aren't in the best interest of the properties and the long-term future of these properties. So hopefully that can help people understand why we're saying growth corridors aren't necessarily capital growth corridors. They're other growth corridors.
Yeah, spot on, Bryce. You're dead right.
Hey, Scott, with that purchase, were you assisted by a stockless seller? Did you get a referral from an accountant or a financial planner? Did you miraculously just come across that area and deal with a local selling agent?
No, well, this is the trap. I was just started looking for properties, and then what props up is this Spruiker's name, and it had a professional name with investor in the title. And they reached out to me through my search engine, and then the sale, then the hard sell come. And it's very easy. You can easily feel intimidated. Bryce just mentioned that before about, okay, they're flashy, they've got expensive cars and they dress well. They've obviously made a quid out of their properties. They know what they're doing. You kind of feel like that your inner voice is not going to be loud enough to convince them that they're wrong. So yeah, I went along with that ride, and it cost me yeah, a lot of money and some time.
How much did you mention about the depreciation and the tax write-offs and how much it was going to cost you per week to hold? How did that sales pitch go to you?
Yeah, exactly as you say it, Ben. There's a depreciation schedule that it comes with, even comes with a rental guarantee on a lot of these properties. And that's kind of laughable when you look back at it. Like, if you buy a good property, why do you need a rental guarantee? And obviously someone's going to have to pay. Someone's got to pay for that insurance on a rental guarantee. It's coming out of my sales price when I buy the property. And it's the same with the sales commission. It's the same with the builders. Everyone's taking their clip that I'm paying for before I can even make any profit on a property like that. So, yeah, rewind.
It's definitely an important reminder. Ben and I talked about what you've just described a lot in the first 100 episodes, but in the second and third 100, we kind of haven't circled back to that a lot. But it's a really, really, really important message that the people with the biggest budgets are the people that are in the subdivisions that you talked about. The reason they've got the biggest budgets is because the developers pay them a lot of money in commissions, but also a lot of sales marketing. So therefore, they can go and pay for ads in Google searches and all the search engines that you talked about, whereas the people who aren't getting those exorbitant commissions generally can't afford the same sort of ad spend. So it's kind of this vicious cycle where the people with the message that isn't the purest have got the biggest cash to attract the more people to come and listen to their message. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. And unfortunately, lots of people get stung. And as I say, we haven't talked about it a lot of late, but we definitely talked about it a lot early days, Ben.
And I've learned along that journey, and I don't regret it. I wouldn't do it again, but I'm happy that it happened because I learned from it. But the takeout for me is that you can make stuff up and still, as long as you make the majority of your right decisions, you can still get yourself in a good financial position, even with our situation. So it's not a setback that you have to carry with you for the rest of your life. It's cost me time, and I'll be in a way better position now, but it's not something that I'm going to dwell on and not move forward.
Yeah, you've learned from that mistake to change the course that you need to change to get to where you get to. So, hey Scott, I love your story because some of the critical things for me that I say, what are the most important things about wealth creation? It's as simple as time in the game, organizing your money, trapping the surplus, and then basically putting that money to work a little bit harder for you, right? And if you can use sensible leverage and make sure you've got buffers and all those types of things in place, it really is pretty ordinary and boring, isn't it?
It's totally, there's no excitement at all. And I don't feel any stress or adrenaline rush in the whole process. It's just, you feel really confident that if you vetted an asset, then you know that just as long as I've got a buffer that I can hold on to it for a few years, I'm not going to lose on it. It's just like a set and forget once you actually get those fundamentals right.
It's boringly beautiful, right? And it's that building up that crest of the wave. I really love that analogy in terms of it does feel like that. And certainly during these times when you're seeing property prices moving higher, you just, it doesn't swell the chest or anything like that. But what it just does is it just reinforces that you took the opportunity, you took action, and you're the beneficiary downstream of the action that you took earlier on, right? So to be as diligent as you were with that delayed gratification story, to now being out the other side of that. And as I say, you're just a listener to our community. You're not a client, but you're out there and you just, that's music to my ears to sort of see people who are just following the proven rules over a long period of time. Investing is a process. It's not an event. You can make some mistakes along the way as long as you don't get too aggressive and too greedy. That can really ruin the whole story. But if you just, sensibly plan out what you're doing, you can ultimately reap the rewards. And I think you and the family and the girls are going to do that. Is there any other sort of key takeaways? This is my last question for you. Any other key takeaways that you'd like to share to the community around, lessons or what you learn or other messages around taking action?
The biggest lesson in looking back, and it's the simplest one, is that you want to do it stress-free. You don't want to be feeling like you're worried that if there's a downturn or you lose a tenant or something like that. So you just, as long as you're diligent with your finances and have some backing behind you, or some defense behind you, then it doesn't feel stressful at all. It's just you buy the right asset, you hold on to it, you open your eyes and go, oh my God, it's worth that much now, and the rent's gone up this amount. Well, and that's when you start turning into a cash flow positive portfolio, and then it just accelerates from there. It's really boring. Yeah.
I think, well, you say boring. I think your story is an inspiration for those folks who are listening to this, who are detail oriented, who don't like to take risks, who like to feel like they're in control of their money. You said money is safety. There's plenty of people who are going to feel like that. So I feel like your story is helpful for those people that think property investing is only for people who are, overt risk takers, who are forever looking for the next shiny object. You're preaching a message that you can do this as an engineer who's detailed by nature, who loves the spreadsheets. You are a reformed squirreler, and it kind of leads into my final question for you is, you obviously have achieved success in your own career. You've got a business. You've made pivots in your family. But what does conversations look like for you now, looking back with your own kids? Because we started the conversation, what was it like for you growing up? And you said delayed gratification was big, but there wasn't a lot of conversations about the specifics of your parents. What about you? What messages are you passing on to your kids, and what sort of joy does it bring you to sort of change the path of what you've described, and be able to impart some of this positivity into your kids?
Yeah, thanks, Bryce. So my girls are all teenagers now. So that's where all my stress comes from. I don't need to have to worry about money to have enough stress on my plate. They certainly keep me honest. But so when I was a kid, I really felt responsible for my own savings. So I was always had a little side gig on a little part-time job, or trying to sell something or whatever. And our kids now got their own little side gig where they sell firewood in bags like you buy at the petrol station. And it's the best thing ever, because it's not about the money they earn. It's about, one, they've got to work for something. Two, if they do make money from it, they're working out, okay, this has taken me X hours to make this much money. Do I want to spend that on an Apple Watch or whatever I want to buy? But the other thing too is that it makes them think about like running a small business, and they have their pricing meetings every year. And do we put the price up, or are we going to price ourselves out of the market? So that's our conversations with the kids, is around how much effort have you put in to making that, and is it worth spending that much money to get that's not going to be looked after, or not going to look good in a year? And about making them feel like they've got to own part of that financial. But we don't obviously make them pay for their day-to-day stuff. We do all that for them. But if they want something nice and they want to save up for something, then they're putting it into the mind, well, I've got to sell X bags of firewood for that, or I've got to work X hours at their part-time job to pay for that item. And then at the end, it's not going to be worth anything. Oh, okay, I'm going to turn 18 in a year or two. I better start saving for a car. So they've got, it's not, we don't tell them about delayed gratification, because the teenagers would scoff at me if I mentioned that. But the conversations are around that. So it's I'm getting a little bit smarter in the way I handle teenage kids, and I'm not hitting them over the head and telling them what to do. It's kind of guiding them from the side.
When I was a boy, we used to have laybys. We never had afterpay.
Yeah. You're teaching them how to fish, Scott, which is awesome. That's the greatest gift we can give to our kids, in terms of, we tell them to touch the pot. They're going to touch the pot because you told them not to touch the pot, right?
Yeah.
But certainly teaching them how to fish is definitely helpful, right? In terms of the context of where money comes from, how it works, and ultimately, you're in control of your own destiny around your story and your journey. And I think that's a powerful message for anyone in life. And again, having some buffers, protections, safety nets, and building resilience is a critical part of the challenges of young people these days, right? So it's not easy out there. We get that. So giving them those life lessons, mate, is a credit to you, credit to Julie, and how you've gone about your journey to date, and effectively, your work is done. As you say, you've got one more to go. You maybe might do a little bit of a value add on this one. to build up its cash flow nature. And then, the portfolio is going to have the debt paid off based on the rental income that's coming into it. And then all of a sudden you're going to live off the spoils. And that's just a credit to you and a credit to how you've gone about it.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And yeah, one of the reasons that we really want to invest in property as opposed to other mediums like shares is you'd appreciate this as a father. You want to be able to help your kids, and having a lower yield but a higher compound growth asset that's a nice feeling for me, because it means I've got to have a bigger asset base to live off the earnings from it. So it means that when it's time to help the kids out, or when I pass, they've got a bigger asset base and something that I've dwindled down off something with a high yield but no growth. So that was really, as a father, pretty much one of the main reasons why property is my chosen medium.
Yeah. Well, you're a good man. You're clearly a man with tremendous family values. Your kids are the beneficiary of that. But I appreciate that you've come on, share your story about getting your money in order, improving the relationship with your wife as a result, and then obviously self-funding your own retirement through your property portfolio whilst you're building up your business as well. So I've been pleasantly surprised too, Scott. I thought this conversation was going to dilute into some low level, lacking intellectual horsepower, having two Collingwood supporters together. But I've been
told you.
I've been pleasantly surprised that it hasn't degenerated into that. But that's tongue in cheek.
Are you saying we're an outlier, Bryce? Are you saying we're an outlier, mate? This is what happens in most Collingwood. When two Collingwood people get together and we talk, this is normally the sort of quality of conversation that comes from.
You normally live in the past. You talk about all the...
Well, a rising tide lifts all ships, doesn't it, Ben? So we've brought Bryce up with us, but it sounds like...
Don't worry, I'm the beneficiary of the averages here. I thought I was going to be lifting it, but clearly that's not the case. You guys are... Ben, you are an outlier. There you go. So, but thanks again for coming on, tongue in cheek and all. But it was terrific. You and I have had a conversation over a year ago. You've been an avid listener of the podcast, and you're modelling the behaviours that require you to have delayed gratification and self-fund your own retirement, which is really great. So, on behalf of everyone here on the Property Couch, Scott, thanks for your time today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Ben and Bryce. Thank you so much.
There you go, Ben. Disappointed me. I thought it was going to be a boring interview because he's a Collingwood supporter, but it was fabulous. And you two just were two peas in a pod, weren't you?
Oh, just, very sensible fella, right? On all levels of life. Like, he understands his weaknesses and addresses them in terms of whether, he was getting a little bit controlling, a bit too squirreling with money, address that, realign the goals. I mean, that's what people at Collingwood do, mate. We get organised, we get on with it, and we enjoy success. But no, to Scott and Julie and the family.
Mate, you got people cringing. There's someone almost bumped into the car in front of them right now because they're listening to that, and you've made them cough on that.
Call me Benji, call me whatever. That's fine.
Oh yeah, Benji. No, I'm not calling you Benji. You play a straight bat too much. So, but you made a good point. But there's the takeaways: delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Money is safety. Felt like a train running away without a brake. I mean, I wonder how many people can relate to this, but also giving hope to people who, we mentioned it in the interview just to sort of reinforce the takeaway now, that people who are detail oriented and conservative and do micromanage a lot of the stuff, it's still possible. I mean, Scott's a successful property investor with a successful future. And so just because he's a detail person doesn't mean that he can't be successful. There's no paralysis by analysis. He still was able to actually put one foot in front of the other and actually do something about it.
Yeah, so it took some calculated risks early, assessed the risk, what they were, and that set him up. Now, as he said, he probably could have gone a little bit harder, could have, like all of us, we've all potentially got one or two mistakes on the journey. But still persisted and really has got himself and the family into a super comfortable position, all through good planning and good execution and taking action. So just a credit to himself. And again, not a fancy approach, not anything, just really, again, very methodical, got in control of money early, understood the power of money and investing to get ahead. and has, taken the time to do the work and just let time do the heavy lifting for him. So I just love that story.
Thanks again, Scott. Tongue in cheek, of course, with all of the Collingwood throwaway lines that I gave. You are a ripper bloke. You are a credit to opening up your financial life for the benefit of this community. You did reach out to me. We spoke about a year ago, and then you reached out to me again, and you said, if there's any benefit in my story, I'd love to share it so that it can benefit other people. I mean, that just shows the character of who you are. So
paying it forward.
We appreciate you coming on. So, mate, this is really exciting. 3 down, 1 to go in this winter series. It has been fabulous so far, and we have got a ripper next week as well. So you should stick around for that, Ben. But until next week, mate.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. See you next week.
Hey there, folks. Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listen to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarizes the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now, don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.